Well, hey folks, in this video I want to ask the question, what are you focusing on? And specifically, I'm going to talk about target fixation. If you want to know more about it, join me right after the intro. Okay, what are we focusing on when we're getting ready to throw? Now, sometimes we can get locked into what's called target fixation. And we take that terminology from driving and other things, where in driving, what will happen a lot of times is you'll see an object on the road and you'll be going, ooh, I need to miss that, I need to miss that. And what do? You drive right over it because your eyes and your brain lead your body to what you're fixated on. And that happens out on the disc golf course as well. How many times have you been out there and there's been an object down the fairway that you go, ooh, I need to miss that, I need to miss that. And what do? You step right up and you hit it because you're spending a lot of your energy and your focus on that object and the body tends to follow it. So some of my suggestion for you today is to realize when you're fixating on an object and move your focus off of that object to help you miss that object. Let me show you an example. This is hole number 5 here at Inverness. And it's just a simple downhill forehand shot down to the basket, hard to the right. This tree right here, this pine tree right in the middle is in the perfect place to get hit. If you're trying to go on the outside of it or the inside of it, it's right in the middle. So what do? They step up, they focus on that tree, they say, I've got to miss that tree. And you get locked into the tree. So if you can understand the tendency of the human body, when we get target fixation, our body tends to try to follow along with that. It can be some of the reason why we do hit those trees or those objects in front of us because we're locking in on them. So what we need to do if we understand that is to maybe not stare at that tree and say, I need to miss it, but pick a point either to the left or the right of it and say, I need to aim 3 feet to the right of that and stare at that spot versus directly at the tree, just to get our minds off of the object we're trying to miss. It's a subtle thing, but if you understand it, it could really help you to avoid missing some of your shots that you're hitting right now because you're focusing on the very thing you're trying to miss. And our minds play this weird thing where we end up hitting the thing we're trying to avoid. So anyway, that's another reason why I encourage using the hoop for training, because it trains your eyes and your body to throw into that one little section. It really hones you in and you start throwing better and more precisely into those targets. Okay, now we're going to go down and we're going to talk about what happens when you focus on the basket at the wrong time and how that can be detrimental. Okay, now here's a situation where target fixation on the basket can get you in trouble. The blue basket is right over there. It's an easy shot to run at maybe an ace run here, but the problem is the road is only about 8 feet to the left of it and it's OB. So what happens is you decide, I'm going to go for it, and you fixate on the basket and you throw it, and the problem is, if you miss it, oftentimes you're going to miss a little left and it's going to go out of bounds. This also happens when we're doing approach shots a lot of times. We get fixated on trying to throw right at the basket, and we're not taking into consideration the terrain around it. We need to maybe, if let's say there's OB to the left like this, we need to adjust our focus and fixate on a point maybe 6 feet to the right of that, almost as if there's a secondary basket that we're aiming. We almost visualize taking that basket and moving it over about 6 feet or so that our miss is going to be a little to the right of the basket. So now if I just decide I'm going to fixate on that basket and go for an ace run, it wasn't that bad. It just lifted and carried over the basket a little, right out of bounds. Whereas if I readjust my aim and I aim almost where that tree is to the right, pretend there's a basket just behind it, and do that same shot, then if I miss, I'm missing to the right on the safe side of things. And if I overcook it a little bit, it's going towards the basket. So we need to know when to focus and fixate on the basket and when that can actually be detrimental to us. Another thing we got to think about is so often we think I always have to be aiming at the basket. And generally, yes, that's good. But think about the times you've been trapped in the woods and you can see the basket, but it's got 14 trees between you and the basket. However, there's a gap over to the right And if you would just say, hey, you know what? If I land it 8 feet from the basket, I'm going to be fine. Instead of fixating on the basket, I'm just going to fixate on a point that's safer and easier near the basket. And I'm just going to make an easier shot and land by the basket to drop it in. Versus trying to go for the basket all the time, where I've got to make an incredible shot just to get there. It's not always going to pay off. So understand what the tendency is for us to fixate on the basket. Most of the time that's good, but sometimes you need to be aware, I need to get off the basket and focus somewhere else. Now finally, the last thing I'll say is, this is one of the reasons why I love forehand approaches in putting, because it allows me to stay focused and locked in on the basket all the way through my shot. Now, I'm not saying this is the best, you know, everybody choose their own, but one of the reasons why I like to do this is because I can stay here and I lock in on that basket. I don't look anywhere else. I fixate on that basket and my head's not moving when I'm throwing these forehands. Couldn't tell by me hitting that tree, but I'm locked in and I'm just fixated on the basket. When you're making your shots, if you can keep your body locked in and focused on what you're aiming at, it's going to help. Well, Pete, what about backhands? Well, it's the same thing. You're just having a little less time to focus on the target if you're moving your head back and forth. But just like in ultimate, I can sit on the ultimate field and turn my head, see somebody running, and before I've even been able to do the calculations in my mind, my body's already figured out to throw it that way. So it's not like the kiss of death that you're moving your head, but understand that you need to, when you move your head, that you want to lock on that target as you're coming through to throw as quickly as possible so that your body knows that's where I need to go. So let's say I'm here, and if you tend to pull back like this, you just need to make sure that you're focused in when you come through. So I'm going to do something like this and then through. Now ideally, if you're set up, you can stay nice and focused on that without pulling back too much. And you're just trying to stay locked on that basket. And for some reason, I'm locked on that tree. It's funny. Even though I'm trying to hit that basket, in my mind I'm going, okay, don't hit that tree, because I keep hitting that tree. That's a perfect example. Your brain starts focusing on what you're thinking about. So even though I knew to look at the basket, my brain overrode, and I kept thinking about that tree. Take a step back when that happens, refocus, and get locked in on the basket so that that's what you're focusing on and not the tree to the left of it. Okay, so in conclusion, the big point I want you to take away today is that we have a tendency to fixate on objects, and that can be both good and bad. It's great when it's the basket, and it's when we need to focus on the basket, but it's bad when it's an object or we're focusing on the basket when we need to be focusing on a landing spot near the basket. So once you understand that our tendency is to lock in on things, we can use that to our advantage to help us putt better, approach better, or hopefully to avoid objects better. So anyway, please feel free to like, subscribe, and leave any comments that you've got down below that how this could help, or any questions you have that maybe this brought up in your mind. I'd love to help you out. And at the end of the day, I really do hope to see you out on the course.